Hey guys, I'm back for a writing lesson, but we're starting a new unit called Realistic Fiction. I wrote it up here on the board. Realistic Fiction. Now, if you look at the word realistic, you should see a word in there that you know. And the word is real. And pat yourself on the back if you saw that word real inside there. And fiction, of course, means not real. The stories are made up, like when we read storybooks, but realistic fiction means that it could be something real that happens. So that means that the stories we're going to write are not about zombies or aliens or princes and princesses and kings and queens. We're writing about things that could really happen. And when I tell children about writing things that really happen, I think about things that could happen to them. Think about things that could happen to you, problems that you could have as a 6 or 7 year old. Okay? I want you to try to write stories with characters that are around your age, because you will be able to write the stories better because you know the problems that a 6 or 7 year old has, or that a first grader has, or that a kindergartner has. You know the kinds of problems that they have because you're that age. You don't know the kind of problems that adults have. So when you make up characters for these stories, I want you to make up characters that are around your age. And the problems that happen to them could be problems that you know about, that happen to a friend, or even things that happen to you. But unlike small moment stories, which we wrote in the beginning of the year, you are not going to be the character. You're going to make up a character and give that character a name and put that character in a place, in a setting. And when you pick the setting, I want you to try to pick places that you know a lot about, places that maybe you go, like the park, or the playground, or school, places that you know a lot about, settings that you know a lot about, because it will make it easier for you to write the story. Okay? Now, I want to introduce you in this video to some of the tools that I have provided for you under the writing tools section on the classwork page. Of course, what has been there since we started the online learning is your word wall. You can always use your word wall. I don't have a copy here, but also your vowel chart, your blends chart, your alphabet chart. Now I'm putting up the checklist for realistic fiction, which you are familiar with this checklist. It's the same exact checklist for small moments, except instead of I wrote about when I did something, I changed it to I wrote about when my character did something. Because realistic fiction and small moment fiction, they're both narrative writing. So they follow the same parts, but you're just going to be making up a character instead of writing about yourself. Now, I provided how to write a realistic fiction book chart, which we're going to talk about. I provided this one, and I also provided this one, which we're going to talk about. You'll see under writing tools. And I think there's even a third one. You just pick the one that works best for you. Now, the thing that I really want to encourage you to do when you write these stories is to plan them first. Remember, we talked about saying the story on your fingers, touching the pages of the booklet, and then sketching a quick picture on each page to remind you of the words to write. Now, I have provided paper. It says realistic fiction paper under writing tools. If you can print that out, you can make booklets. You can make 3-page booklets, 5-page booklets, however many pages you want. If you cannot print, you could use a notebook like I have here, or the black and white notebook that you have, maybe your reading book. But please try to write across the pages. Don't write the whole story on one page. Try to write across 3 pages or 5 pages or however many pages you want. And you can even draw a box for the picture and then you can leave spaces, space for the lines at the bottom, okay? And then you will just send me whatever you write. I've also provided some planning pages. This is a great one called Tell Your Story, and you touch each part and tell what is going to be in your story, the characters, the setting, the feelings, the talking, and then of course the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay? I provided a story roller coaster, or a story mountain sometimes it's called, because all stories have the same parts. They have the beginning, and then as it's going up you get the problem, and then the middle of the story, and then the solution to the problem is going down on the roller coaster, and then the end, what happened at the end to the main character. Okay? The beginning, the problem is when it gets exciting, the middle, the solution, the end. I also provided some papers for you to think about your characters. The more you know about your characters, the more details you can write. You can write, of course, whether they're girl or boy, their name, eye color, hair color, their age, the clothes they wear. You can also think about maybe their favorite game or sport or toy. This is a great one. What kind of person are they? Are they a friendly person? Are they happy? Are they funny? Are they smart? Are they a good friend? What words describe your character? Who else is in the story? What friends of theirs are in the story? Are there families? Is it a story that has like a mom in it, like Henry and Mudge? Or even Junie B? Does it have friends like Junie B has friends in her books? Think about realistic problems. Think about problems that could happen to you. I like this page because you can list a lot of problems here that could apply to any character that age. Maybe somebody getting hurt at the playground, or somebody forgetting their homework when they go to school. Think about problems that could happen to you, okay? And then how would they solve those problems? How would they solve the problem of getting hurt on the playground? What would be the solution? How would they solve the problem of forgetting their homework or talking during class? Okay? What is the solution? These are all planning pages. And then this is a nice planning page of the whole thing at the bottom of how to plan your story. Introduce the problem. The problem is getting worse. Oh, sorry, I skipped the first box. Set the scene and introduce your character, of course. Introduce the problem. Add details to the problem, and the problem gets worse. And then the problem gets even worse, and then it gets solved. A little trick to remember to add suspense and details to your story is that usually problems in a story get worse before they get better and are solved at the end. That's how you add details and stretch out your story, okay? Now, I also have a chart that tells what realistic fiction writers can do. We're going to learn about a lot of, if not all of these things that realistic fiction writers can do, which a lot of them are similar to the things that small moment writers do, such as bringing your story to life, which you saw this chart when we did small moment writing. We're going to use that chart again. Okay, we're going to talk about quotation marks again. We talked about that in other units of writing. This is how to write quotation marks. These are other words for said that you can use to make your story exciting. Instead of writing said Tom or said Caleb, you could put other words. You could put shouted or yelled. That makes a better picture in the reader's mind. It gives the reader a better picture. These are time words and phrases that can move your story along. Words for the beginning, the middle, and the end. Telling when something happens, one afternoon, or one day, or suddenly, the passing of time, the next morning. If you notice in your books, when you're reading this week, notice the words that are in your story that move the story along, that tell which part of the story you're at, the beginning, middle, or end. Then we're going to look at mentor writers, and we're going to look at this is a chart that I put in the writing tools that are things that our favorite authors do that we can do in our writing. And I think there's even another chart in there as well. Then, of course, we have to think about our spelling, ways to spell words. And we saw this chart earlier in the year, but we're going to revisit it. And then we're going to talk about, I'm going to put this chart up called Showing and Not Telling, which we talked about, or Show, Don't Tell, which we talked about in poetry as well, and even in Small Moments at the beginning of the year. How can you show something that's happening instead of just telling someone what is happening? Instead of telling the reader that the character's hot, maybe the character was fanning himself, or maybe the character had a red face and was sweating. Instead of saying that the character was angry, maybe the character stomped their feet or crossed their arms or was yelling. So that's how you show and not tell. And then I left some spaces that you can fill in, tired and cold, and you could, and also messy, and then you can add some of your own there as well. Okay? Instead of saying the character is messy, you can show that they're messy, and then the reader will be able to figure that out. Okay? So these are all the tools that are there, plus some more that I might add to help you. Please use the tools. Print out as many as you can. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk about how to get started with your realistic fiction stories. Okay? I'll see you next time.